To sum up the argument so far, first, if you want to fully develop your own individuality, at the same time, you have to respect other people's individuality too. Second, if you want to make use of the power you possess, and you have to understand the obligations that come along with it. And third, if you want to show off your wealth, you have to take seriously the responsibility that comes with it. In other words, it all comes down to these 3 points. To put it another way, unless you're someone who has cultivated a genuine sense of ethics through real personal discipline, that means there's no value in developing your individuality, no value in wielding power, and no value in using money either. To put that another way, in order to freely enjoy and take pleasure in all 3 of these, and that's where the need arises for all 3 of those things to be guided and governed by the character that ought to stand behind them. If someone without character tries to freely develop their individuality, they end up getting in other people's way. If they try to wield power, if you let it run wild, if you start throwing money around to get what you want, it corrupts society. It ends up presenting a pretty dangerous phenomenon. And these 3 things are what you're most likely to come into close contact with in your lives ahead. I really do think you absolutely need to become people of strong character and genuine integrity. This is a bit of a digression, but as you may know, England is a country that places an enormous value on freedom. And yet, for all its love of freedom, there's no country more orderly than England. Truth be told, I don't really like England. It's not a flattering thing to admit, but it's the truth. So there's nothing I can do but say it. There's probably no other country in the world that's both that free and that well-ordered at the same time. Japan doesn't even come close by comparison, but they aren't simply free, just like that. Just as you cherish your own freedom, learn to respect the freedom of others. They've been getting a proper social education since they were children. So behind their freedom, there's almost certainly a sense of duty that comes along with it. England expects every man to do his duty, and Nelson's famous words were never meant to apply only to that particular moment. It must be a deeply rooted way of thinking that developed hand in hand with their sense of freedom. When they have grievances, they often hold protest demonstrations. But the government never interferes or tries to meddle in their affairs. Just leave it alone and say nothing. But the ones organizing the demonstrations knew exactly what they were doing, too. They don't go around causing trouble for the government or acting recklessly. These days, you see all kinds of reports in the newspapers about women's rights activists causing all sorts of trouble. Oh, that's an exception. You might say there are too many exceptions for them to really be called exceptions. And fair enough. But it still seems like the only way to look at it is as exceptions. Things like not being able to find a husband, or not being able to find work, or having been raised a certain way from childhood. Maybe they're just taking advantage of that whole culture of respecting women, but either way, it doesn't seem like typical everyday behavior for an Englishman. He destroys famous paintings, goes on hunger strikes in prison to drive the guards crazy. They chain themselves to the benches in Parliament and make a point of screaming and hollering as loudly as they can. This was an unexpected turn of events, but then again, maybe she figures that no matter what she does, the man will hold back and let it go, so why not? But whatever the reason, it still feels like something's off. The typical English character, as I've just described it, seems to love freedom only to the extent that it never strays too far from a sense of duty. So I don't mean to say we should model ourselves after England or anything like that. In short, I believe that freedom without a sense of duty is not true freedom. The reason being that this kind of selfish freedom simply cannot exist in society. Because even if it does exist, it's bound to be pushed aside and crushed by outside forces almost immediately. I deeply long for you all to be free. At the same time, I sincerely hope that you will come to truly understand what it means to have a sense of duty. In that sense, I have no hesitation in calling myself an individualist. Now, I don't want there to be any misunderstanding about what I mean by individualism. Especially with young people like yourselves, I just couldn't live with myself if I planted the wrong idea in your heads. Please keep that in mind. Time is short, so I'll keep my explanation as brief as I can. Personal freedom, as I mentioned a moment ago, is absolutely essential for the development of individuality. And since the development of that individuality has a tremendous bearing on your own happiness, as long as it doesn't affect others. I keep enough freedom for myself that I can face left while you're perfectly welcome to face right. It seems only right that the same should be extended to others as well. And that, in a nutshell, is what I mean by individualism. The same goes for wealth and power, too. Just because you don't like someone, that doesn't mean you get to crush them out of existence. Just because you don't like someone, you want to take them down, even when they haven't done anything wrong. But what happens when people abuse them? Human individuality is completely destroyed by that very thing. And at the same time, human suffering must arise from that same place. For example, even if I haven't done anything wrong, just because the government doesn't like me, what do you think would happen if the commissioner of police sent officers to surround my house? The superintendent general of the Metropolitan Police may well have that kind of authority, but common decency simply won't allow him to use it that way. Or that some powerful merchant house like Mitsui or Iwasaki would shun me simply because of who I am. And what about bribing my household servants to turn against me at every turn? How would that sit with you? If there's even a little bit of genuine character behind all their wealth, they would never dream of doing anything so outrageous. All these problems stem from a failure to grasp individualism as a moral principle, where people think only of themselves. It is nothing more than a self-serving attempt to impose one's own views on the general public through power or money. So this individualism, the individualism I'm describing here, it poses absolutely no danger to the state. Contrary to what ordinary people tend to think, my interpretation is that you respect your own existence at the same time as you respect the existence of others. I truly believe that's a fine principle to live by. Put more simply, it's a philosophy that has no partisan bias but does have a clear sense of right and wrong. It means not forming factions or cliques, and not acting blindly in the pursuit of power or money. And that's exactly why, beneath the surface, there's a loneliness hiding there that nobody else can see. Since I'm no longer tied to any faction, I'll simply go my own way, and at the same time, since we shouldn't stand in the way of others going their own path, there are times and situations where people simply have to go their separate ways. That's what makes it so lonely. Back when I was in charge of the arts and literature column at the Asahi Shimbun, someone, I can't quite remember who, I once wrote something unkind about a man named Miyake Setsure. Of course, it wasn't a personal attack, just a bit of criticism. And there was only a line or two of it. I'm not sure exactly when it came out. I was the one in charge at the time, but I had fallen ill, so it may well have been during that illness. Or maybe it wasn't during an illness at all, and she simply decided it was fine to let it out. Anyway, that review ended up getting published in the Asahi literary column. And that got the folks over at Nippon Oyobi Nihonjin pretty riled up. They didn't come to me directly. He came to the man who worked under me at the time and asked to take back what he had said. The thing is, it didn't come from the person themselves. Setsure's followers, though followers sounds a bit like something out of a gambling den, which is a little funny. Well, something like a fellow member, I suppose, but he absolutely insisted I take it back. If it were a matter of fact, sure, that would be fair enough, but it's just criticism, so what can you do? From where I stand, there's really no other way to put it than to say the choice is mine to make. And on top of that, some of the very people at Nippon Oyobi Nihonjin who asked me to cancel my subscription have been writing nasty things about me in every single issue. That's exactly what makes it so startling. I wasn't part of the negotiation directly, but when I heard about it secondhand, I got a strange feeling. You see, on my end, I operate on the basis of individualism, whereas it seemed like they were operating on a purely partisan basis. Back then, I was broad-minded enough to publish even negative reviews of my own work in the literary column I was editing. Their so-called group members all got upset at once, saying they didn't like the way Setsure had been described. I was both startled and a little unsettled by it. I also thought, if you'll forgive me for saying so, that it felt outdated. Like something out of a feudal era, a pack of people bound together by the old ways. But even thinking it through that way, I still couldn't shake a certain feeling of loneliness. I believed that differences of opinion, no matter how close two people might be, were simply something you couldn't do anything about. I may offer advice to the young people who come and go from my home, but I would never try to suppress or silence their opinions. I never do it unless there's a truly serious reason. I acknowledge other people's existence to that extent. which means I'm giving them that much freedom. So even if I feel deeply humiliated, I can never ask for help from someone who isn't willing to give it. That's the loneliness that comes with individualism. Individualism means you first figure out what's right and wrong before deciding which way to go. Rather than just following or turning away from a particular person, sometimes I find myself completely alone and this lonely feeling just washes over me. And that makes perfect sense. Even a bundle of kindling feels more reassuring when it's all tied together. And there's one more thing I'd like to mention just to avoid any misunderstanding. Now, when people hear the word individualism, they tend to assume it's the opposite of nationalism, something that actively tears it down. It's not some vague, shapeless feeling that defies explanation. To be honest, I'm not really a fan of labeling things with this or that ideology. I don't think people can really be summed up by a single set of principles, but for the sake of explanation, here I find myself using the word principle as a catch-all for a number of different things I want to say. Some people go around insisting that Japan simply cannot function today without nationalism, and they genuinely believe it too. And on top of that, there are those who go around preaching that the state will collapse unless individualism is crushed underfoot. There are quite a few of those as well, but there's absolutely no way it could be anything so ridiculous. The truth is, we are nationalists, and we are also cosmopolitans, and at the same time, we are individualists as well.